Hey mate, how the hell are you? As much as I hate to lump weddings in the same basket, there are a few things about wedding ceremonies, whether it's a registry ceremony, whether it's religious, whether it's a civil ceremony on a cliff top overlooking the sunset, there are a few things that stand true for what I would, oh, yeah, I want to say it, 99% of people all want these few things. And of course, there's a million different ceremony styles. There's a billion, trillion, infinite number of different ceremony locations. There are different personalities from officiants and ministers. There are wild rituals, different cultures. There are a million ways of doing it, as in the order that different sections of the ceremony go in. Some couples, for example, will have a processional or a coming down the aisle. Traditionally, a bride escorted by dad walking down the aisle, it's music, everyone else is there assembled, you rock up, and that's how it starts. Where others will gather with their guests. They'll greet their guests as they arrive at wherever the location is, maybe have some drinks, maybe some laughs, shake hands, hugs, and then, quite literally, someone, often the officiant, has a glass too, clink, clink, clink. Hey guys, it's about time that we made this legal. And that's how they start. That's how they start their ceremony. So you might want your ceremony to feel like a respectful and meaningful expression of your commitment to each other. And yet the very next engaged couple might want a party vibe with raucous crowd participation and shots at the end. For a civil ceremony in Australia at least, as long as the legal aspects are taken care of, the form of your wedding ceremony can be literally anything you can dream up. And I've seen, wow, what are we? We're over 970. I've conducted over 970 ceremonies at the moment as I'm recording this. And so in those 15 years, I've seen pretty much everything. And I can say, hands down, without a doubt, the most fun and impactful wedding ceremonies are those that fit the couple the best. So there's no point arriving in a helicopter to have all your guests down there on the ground going, woo, yeah, oh my God. Everyone gets their cameras, phones out, etc., records it, goes wild for you. No fucking point if you're an introvert. If you don't like the spotlight, if you don't care for people's attention, that's not for you. As good as it may sound superficially, it's not going to work for you. And likewise, something as simple as having a witness raffle, to not have assigned witnesses before you commence the ceremony, but to have some form of chance that anyone who is legally able could be your witness. Now, you're going to hate that if you're a type A personality and you have to know how everything goes from start to finish. Otherwise, you start to get anxious. You're going to hate that. That is not an option for you. Given that I believe 99% of couples want these 4 things, this is what I'd like to get down to the crux of in this episode. And those 4 things are feeling calm, feeling prepared, being present, and being receptive. Let me go over those again. Calm, prepared, present, and receptive. Calm means that you can still have excitement. You can still be a little bit nervous. You can still have all those things, but it's an internal knowing that everything is going as it should and everything is going to plan. Being prepared means that you won't feel like you're put on the spot when you're standing there or sitting there or however you want to do it. You have designed a ceremony that fits you and your fiancé, not having something pushed upon you. So being prepared and being able to assert yourself ahead of time, I think, is absolutely crucial. Being present in your ceremony, obviously physically you're going to be there. Hopefully, you're connecting physically with your fiancé, hanging onto their hands, holding their waist. But what I'm talking about is emotionally. and also in the way that you're reacting to things. So really seeing, hearing, all the senses, touching, feeling, smelling, all of those things, drinking it all in, being present. I feel like couples are disappointed after their ceremony when they realize that they blinked and then they missed it because they were rushing through. They weren't really, the next one, receptive. They weren't drinking it in. They weren't able to reciprocate. You know, a guest coming up, hey, how's it going? You excited? Oh my God, yes. Yes. And having that exchange, being receptive of what other people are giving you and being calm enough in yourself to be able to reflect that back and to be able to say, hey, did you find the place all right? You got to park? Awesome. That's great. Oh, you parked? No, no, no. You parked miles away. No, no, you should have parked here. Blah, blah, blah. Just those little interactions, being receptive to what other people are giving you, reflecting it back, and having that exchange rather than being very insular and silo-minded and it's me going through this experience and everyone else, they're all external characters. You want to be in it, in the middle. You want to be interacting. You want to be lapping it all up, right? Don't you? Isn't that what you really want to do? So in this episode, I'm going to go through lots of little checkpoints. Some of them will really stick with you and you'll go, oh God, write that down. Yes, I've got to check that that's going to happen. That is really important to me. And some other things you might go, oh, Camille, God, that's so minor to me, super minor, not even caring if it's going to happen or not. That's fine with me. It's not going to make or break our experience. And that's exactly how I'd love you to listen to this episode is going, okay, what's she got next? Nah, don't care. Or, holy shit, I got to write this down. Let's get the notes app out. Let's write this down. I've got to chat with my fiancé about that in the next week. We've got to work out what we're going to do about that. This is a real bit of a workshop episode, I guess, which I hope is super valuable for you. Let's get stuck into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. We're going to jump right in and tackle what is frequently, in my circles at least, as a celebrant here in Australia, one of the more controversial topics, I guess, because there's definitely a camp of celebrants who believe that ceremony rehearsals are essential, that you'd be an idiot not to have them, that they are so hugely valuable to not only your experience as the couple getting married, but also for your peace of mind, for helping you to sleep in the days leading up, and also being able to pass on extra information that you might pick up at the rehearsal for your family, your friends, your guests, and or other vendors as well. And there's another camp who just goes, no, absolute rubbish. Having a rehearsal takes away a lot of energy, spontaneity. It takes away the surprise, the joy of being there, of doing it for the first time, of making mistakes, of giggling together, of getting through it together. And so there's two very different mindsets there. For me, I think it's a horses for courses situation. So there are some couples, certain personality types, certain budget, dare I say it, if there is a massive budget and a couple's got a huge guest list, because this usually goes hand in hand with a really large wedding party with quite traditional or set requirements for the processional, the arriving at the ceremony, the recessional, for maybe different rituals, things like this. Everyone needs to know their place. And so in this situation, it's a no-brainer for me. I would highly recommend that the couple do a rehearsal, walk it through, work out exactly who goes where and when. So then there's not several hundred people looking at each other going, what's next? Then there are some beautiful elopements that I conduct. I've got some coming up. There's a few on private properties out in the middle of nowhere, underneath the gum tree, like super relaxed, with such a small guest list that we won't even need to use microphones. And one that I'm particularly excited about is heading on down to Kangaroo Island, which is just off the coast here of South Australia, and is such a pristine, beautiful, natural environment. And I get to go down to the Southern Ocean Lodge and marry this couple who are wildly in love, wildly pragmatic too, which is really gorgeous. And we're going to keep it super simple, very minimal vows, couple of photos, and in that case, there's no need for a rehearsal. No one's rocking up with a big string quartet. It's going to be just us, probably standing on a beach, probably feet in the water. And the more simple a ceremony is, there's more, in my opinion, a likelihood that you won't need a rehearsal. But I'd love for you to also consider there's a guy that is a mentor of mine. He's a teacher of mine. And he's also someone who I married. Like, I conducted his marriage ceremony. And his name is Vin Jiang. And he's an incredible educator on communication and speaking. He was a keynote speaker traveling all around the States. And he's since brought all of that knowledge back home here to Adelaide and teaches it remotely to CEOs and boards all over the world. But the point is, Vin was on socials the other day and he was talking about the question that he gets asked the most. And it's about keynote speaking, which is when you have a defined and a specific topic that you specialize in and that you are essentially providing solutions for the audience. And 9 times out of 10, these speeches, these keynotes, they're called, are delivered standing up on big stages, big production, huge lights, hot lights. They're shining down on you and you're delivering, via microphone to a large audience. And this is what he did for work. And so the question he gets asked the most is, how the hell do you get through those speeches and how do you make it sound really natural and how do you get comfortable up there and confident enough to be able to deliver the great stories that you do, the energy, the passion, the knowledge? And Vin basically said, there's no secret. There's no real shortcut. The only thing that you can really do is practice it. So having bright lights shining down on you on a stage is not a natural environment. It's not where most of us are going to be frequently. And so what he was saying was, you've got to put yourself in that environment and practice it. You need to get used to it. So then you can start acting naturally in that environment. So he was, suggesting having a lighting set up perhaps at home, put on the big lights, shine them down on you, deliver your speech, do it over and over again. And it hit home for me because I feel like wedding ceremonies are quite similar in that it's not a keynote speech by any means, but you're standing up and you're doing and saying things that you would never normally do. You don't normally stand up in your formal best outfit, get your hair done, get your makeup done, your nails, fancy shoes, fancy jewelry, and then have all your loved ones. Like, it's really strange when you think about it. All your loved ones are generally sitting there looking up at you, completely silent. And when was the last time that happened with your loved ones? Because I can't remember when it happened with mine. Looking up at you, listening to you talk about your feelings, your relationship, what you want for the future, all these sorts of things. It's not a situation that most of us are even vaguely familiar with. And so when you are going into your wedding ceremony, I think it's completely normal to feel worried because you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's next. You don't even know how it's going to go. And in that context, I really feel like having a ceremony rehearsal with your officiant, your minister, your celebrant, and in whatever style and way that they conduct that with you, that's going to be similar to how they conduct your ceremony as well. You're going to have a heads up. You're going to have a chance to go, oh, okay, I thought I'd be standing there. I thought I'd be facing this way. I thought I'd be holding the microphone. I thought that whatever it could be, you could have all of these ideas and preconceptions in your head and completely waste time because it's not how your officiant thinks it's going to go. And so this coming together of what you think and what your officiant, celebrant, minister thinks is really important, I think, to have that happen well before the actual gig, well before your keynote speech, well before the nerves kick in and the significance of the moment really dawns on you, because then it can feel overwhelming. And we don't want that. As I said, calm, prepared, present, and receptive. You can have a wild ceremony with those 4 things. You can have a very conservative ceremony with those 4 things. But with those 4 things, you're going to get the most out of it. You're not going to be one that looks back and goes, I don't even remember what happened. Okay, so whether you choose to have your rehearsal or not, definitely consider how many guests you have, what sort of budget you have, whether it's a very large space where there's lots of options for where you enter, where you exit, where people are standing, sitting, where your photographer's set up, all these different things. The wider, the bigger the space, the more opportunities there are for people to go free range and go, I feel like I should be over here. You know, a smaller space, it refines your options. So that's another thing to take into consideration. Rehearsal or no rehearsal aside, the next thing I'd really love you to be thinking about is the location of your ceremony. So if you're lucky enough to have an option, you might have a venue that has a ceremony and a reception space in or outside of that venue. The people who run the venue might say, this is your ceremony space. They are set up this way with this orientation. That's the view, this is what you're standing in front of, et cetera, et cetera. It might be really clearly defined, or you may have an option. If you have an option, then you can start having a look at these different aspects that are going to change how you feel during the ceremony, how confident you are when you arrive, and in my opinion, how effective, I guess, your ceremony is going to be. So you're going to be looking at the space that you've got to work with, and you want to check out if you can improve on, for example, the very first thing is your inclement weather options. Inclement. I don't think I've ever used that word in my life until I became a celebrant. Inclement this, inclement that. Inclement just means not ideal, unpleasant. So definitely in Australia, I mean, this certainly comes into play when we've got 40 degrees, 42, 43 degrees Celsius, wedding ceremonies out with no shade. That is an inclement weather condition. But there are likewise howling winds, there are, floods, there's storms, there are all sorts of different ways that weather can impact your outdoor wedding ceremony and the location. So the very first thing I'd be asking my venue, wherever that may be, is thanks for letting me know about the ceremony location. What's our inclement weather option? Doesn't mean bad weather generally, could mean insanely good, like too hot, too sunny, could burn all your guests to a crisp long before you even start coming down the aisle. So we need to work that out. You've got to have that backup plan just in your back pocket. You don't have to focus on it. You don't have to give it energy, if you like, but you need to know it, because if you do have to enact it, it can't be a surprise to you or to anyone else. It can't ruin your day. You can't give it that sort of power. Okay, so we've got an inclement weather option. And then you want to suss out literally the surface that you've got to work with. Where are you standing, sitting for the ceremony? Indoors, it's going to make it fairly easy. Outdoors, now this is where it gets fun. Many ceremony spots are situated on top of grass, which generally is pretty good. It's a little bit soft. It's hard enough that you're not going to, sink into it, hopefully, if it hasn't been raining for days before. It looks great. It's fairly cooling. And appearance-wise, beautiful, natural, organic, love it. But for some ceremony locations, you're on concrete. Hard, grey, hot as hell when it gets hot. Not very good for drainage when it starts raining. Or you could be on top of a dirt situation. Again, it's a little bit trickier. Or gravel. I've seen some like gravel or rocks, ceremony sites, and to try and get your heels to stand up on those, it's honestly a sprained ankle or several waiting to happen. So you want to try and make sure that you have the most accessible, the most comfortable surface at your ceremony site. You also want to have a quick look. You're not standing there with a level or anything, but just the incline of the spot that you've chosen to have your ceremony on, the access to get there. Are you standing on the side of a hill for 20 minutes? It can be super painful for those of you, your wedding party, your guests, your family and friends who might not be as mobile or as stable on their feet. It can also make things like arbors and seats and floral installations really unstable as well to have the ceremony site on an incline. Ideally, you want a flat landing or a surface where yourself and your fiancé, or perhaps if you're setting it up this way, your bridal party, your wedding party are standing or sitting, and hopefully where your guests are standing or sitting as well. The next thing you want to be looking at for your ceremony spot is shade. You want protection. Peak season for weddings is generally when the sun is shining. Sometimes we're super lucky, we get gorgeous days, and it's a balmy 25 odd degrees, and your guests are happy. A lot of the time here in Australia, we have scorching hot days. And on the occasion where the ceremony is starting late and the guests are out in the sun for like half an hour before it actually starts, it's nothing short of cruel, and it's also really dangerous health-wise. So you're looking for nice, even shade. It's really tricky under trees because sometimes it gets a bit spotty, under the shade. And so your photographer will see some people will have bright white spots of sunshine on shiny bald heads, and then other people will just have completely dark faces and then bright white shoes. It's tricky with that dappled sunlight. So you're looking for as even shade as you can possibly get, definitely to have the wedding party and yourselves as the couple getting married standing under there, but if you can, possibly for your guests as well. That way, if you do have a light drizzle, the cover, the canopy, the tree itself will be catching a lot of that, and generally can stay out for a little bit longer as well. And then the next thing I want you to be thinking about is the seating. Some really different setups, and those that are featured on social media quite heavily, are ceremonies that are set up in the round. So imagine the couple standing in the middle, maybe some beautiful florals around the edge, and then a row or two of seated guests around the outside. This can be really good with smaller numbers of guests as well. It can be handy if you have like an arc rather than a full complete circle, because you really want to consider how the couple are getting in, getting out, how photographers are taking photos, how videographers are moving around, and also how your celebrant or officiant, your minister, is able to get up close to them, perhaps to offer a microphone for vows and things like that, or the person who's bringing the rings in. How are they getting in? Where are they standing? Will they have their backs to everyone? These are things that you really want to kind of work out as you go. And if it's a look that you really want to go for, have a bit of a think about the practicality, the comfort for you and your guests. Let's face facts. You've always been the planner and the organizer. And your fiancé's eyes glaze over a little when you start talking about the details of your wedding day. But you really need someone to share this all with, to bounce ideas off, and someone who's not going to ruin the surprises, but also be supportive and maybe even offer a different perspective. So when you're needing to get a second opinion about your bridesmaid, your in-laws, or your first dance song, Unbridely Couples is your safe space. Unbridely hosts a private Facebook community where modern engaged couples can share ideas, chat, and solve problems, and generally just get freaking excited about their wedding. We also have a curated list of experienced wedding vendor professionals in there to offer suggestions and tips, insight into how to get the most out of your big day. But with no unsolicited DMs or pushy sales tactics, it's just not what Unbridely is about. So you can search for the Unbridely Couples group on Facebook or just click on the link in the show notes. I'll see you in there. Another setup that is quite popular on social media is that of a runway. So having a long, thin aisle, essentially, but instead of having the guests in rows along the side, perpendicular to the aisle, they have the guests as if it were a fashion show. Let's say it's just a single row of guests, but starting at the very top of the aisle, where let's say the bride is going to be walking on down, facing inwards, lining all the way down the aisle until the bride reaches the front there to her fiancé and starts the ceremony. So now everyone's facing in. This is what I don't get about these setups as well. It works in a fashion show because the attention is not on the stage itself, the top of the T. The attention is down the length of the T, if you like, the aisle, because that's where the models and the clothes or accessories, whatever, are being shown. But in this case, the use of the aisle is just once to go up, usually, and once to come back down when the couple are married. So what concerns me most as a celebrant in seeing these beautiful posts of gorgeous aisles with everyone facing in towards the aisle with the runway set up, adorned with beautiful flowers, roses overflowing, is the practicality and the comfort of it. What do the guests do once whoever's rocking up goes down the aisle, gets up the front there? Does everyone move their chairs at the same time? I imagine a lot of sounds like, the scraping of chair legs as everyone shuffles their chair around to the front. But then they're all in a line, like they're all sitting in a single file, like plane. Yeah, I don't get that. Or maybe everyone just cranes their necks, just over their shoulder a bit, just like this. And maybe they look that way. I'm not sure. But I get how beautiful it is, don't get me wrong, but I wonder about the practicality. So I'd love for you to think that through, depending on how you're set up for your seating, then just make sure that people can see, people can hear, people can get in and out, keeping flowers sort of out of the way is really handy so then people don't trip over, and comfort. We want everyone to feel comfortable and have access to the areas they need to get to. And one last thing about the ceremony setup, I know for a lot of people, it's really important to have that first kiss, you are now married, big smooch, to have that magic photo, that moment captured, but without your officiant, your celebrant, standing directly behind you, kind of looking at you and critiquing your kiss. You need to let the person who's conducting your ceremony know. You got to tell them. I don't care if you offend them. I really don't care. I will never be behind a couple as they're kissing. I think it's creepy. I think it's really weird. And I think it's the start of their moment as well. That's the start of, we're married now. It's you and me, babe. Let's go. I don't want to be there in the middle of that. That's their story. Off you go, kids. Have fun. So I'm going to be completely out of the way. Whoever is conducting your ceremony, please ask them at that moment when you get told you can pash, get out of the fucking way if it's important to you. The next thing I'd like you to think about then is your recessional. The recessional is you're married, you generally are walking back up an aisle or at least walking towards your family and friends. You're hoping some great music's playing and you want to be hugged and loved. And sometimes you have rose petals, being thrown in your face, which is fantastic. Sometimes it's bubbles, sometimes lavender. I've seen olive leaves and gum leaves and all sorts of things. And there's lots of different solutions depending on what you like the most. But as you're doing that, at the end of the ceremony, do you want people to come up and hug you? Do you want Auntie Thelma to put that satin horseshoe on your wrist as you walk down? Do you want her to stop you and do that? Or are you really looking for that hero photo moment? Yourself, your brand new hubby, wife, spouse, you're holding on to each other, you're laughing hysterically, walking down the aisle surrounded by your loved ones. Is that the photo that you want? Do you want the rose petals like all showering down on you? Do you want your wedding party just over your shoulder? And so, yeah, if you want to walk on down and have what I call air behind you, so your photographer is trying to run backwards, God love them, and trying to get this beautiful shot, rose petals are going, everyone's laughing, you're looking at each other, you're holding each other's hands. You want air behind you. You want it to be as clean as possible. So keep your wedding party out of the aisle until these photos are taken, right out of the aisle. Don't have them looking on down, going, oh, is it our turn yet? No, stay out. Please stay out. And then, yeah, have your officiant, be able to send them on down the aisle if that's what you're doing, of course. And if not, just dispersing into the group. That's completely fine as well. Also, if you're looking for the dip and kiss, very popular on social media at the moment, walk down the aisle about halfway. We get a bit of a dip of one, kissing, beautiful, flowers up in the air maybe, whatever it is. Please rehearse it. Please work out which way you're dipping, how you're dipping, when you're dipping. Let everyone know. It's for your safety. It's for, again, sprained ankles. And just, you can't get that moment back. Just take a little bit of time. You're just in the lounge room. Just dip a bit, kiss a bit, dip a bit, kiss a bit, and go, we've got it. Please give it a try before you get there. So I'd also like to pass on some final tips to you for how to feel calm, prepared, present, and receptive. And they are to consider some things like having drinks before the ceremony. So in any other social event and situation, people are generally welcomed as a group with an offering of something. So if you have your guests arrive, let's say at 3:00 for a 3:30 ceremony, then give them a drink. It doesn't have to be alcoholic, but it could be. It could be just some iced tea in an urn there to greet them and some music playing in the background. Welcome them to the space, make them feel comfortable, let them get their bearings, let them work out whether they're seated, standing, where they're going to be, and to maybe meet up with someone that they might know. It really changes the entire atmosphere of a ceremony when the guests who have arrived have been welcomed with hospitality and warmth and consideration for them. Microphone technique. If you do have guest numbers that are, for me, it's about 25-ish guests, where any more than that means that they have to stand or sit a little bit further away, just a little bit. And then it makes it difficult to hear. For myself, well, there's no fear there. What did my dad used to call me? Oh, yeah. I just remembered. He would say, Camille, you've got a mouth like the Warragamba Dam. Really big dam and water reservoir in New South Wales. So I don't have a problem with projecting my voice. But for some couples, even if they are good speakers, they find that when it comes to their ceremony, their throat closes up a bit and they sort of end up talking a bit like this. It's nerves. It's your diaphragm, not helping you. It's not being familiar with the situation. So if you find that happening to you when maybe you're practicing your vows, even though you've only got about 25 or 30 guests, it might be time to turn to your celebrant officiant going, it's time to get the microphone out. And this is ahead of time. Like, this isn't during the ceremony you go, yeah, I've decided right now I need a microphone. No. What I'm talking about is well ahead. This is the prepared part, right? It's knowing what you need in that moment, even though you've never done it before. So I'm hoping that the person that you've chosen to conduct your ceremony is going to be standing there with this microphone, whether they hold it for you, whether you hold it for yourself. I'd love for you to also keep in mind that if you're going to hold it for yourself, there's going to be a lot of things going through your head, a lot of things. Maybe mic technique won't be at the top of that list of the things that you're thinking about in that moment. So perhaps get your celebrant or officiant to hold the microphone for you. I find it a little bit stilted to have microphone stands because, again, they sort of block people. They're a physical barrier, in between yourself and your guests or yourself and your future husband, wife, or spouse, right? So have a think about that. Are you any good at mic technique? Is that going to change during the wedding ceremony? How are you going to work that out? Vow books versus vow cards. Have a think about it. Do you want to be holding your fiance's hand? It's awesome too. I can assure you, it actually helps you to feel a little bit more calm, a little bit more stable, definitely connected. And so it can be great to say your vows and hang on to the hand of your fiance at that moment. But then if you've got a vow book and you need to turn pages, you can see quickly how that can become an issue. For me, I'm a fan of vow cards. I like to print them for my couples, but you can certainly do them for yourselves, to have them on heavier cardstock so they're not blowing around in the breeze. We don't want to be reading from phones. We don't want to have scrunched up bits of paper that have been shoved down the bodice of your dress, things like that. So have a think about vow books versus vow cards. Think about, I've got to read them when I'm right on the verge of crying. Make the font a bit bigger. Another tip for having you stay more calm by being more prepared. Another thing to keep in mind, do you want or need to sign your paperwork, your marriage certificates, before you're received and or congratulated by your friends and family? A standard ceremony format here in Australia, at least, is you're pronounced as married, then moved to one side for signing, and then come back and sort of set free, if you like. And that's where the pedal toss and everything would happen. It can feel to some people like that's a real break in the continuity. A lot of couples want to be pronounced wifey's for lifey. Yes. And then they grab each other's hand and it's please go wild. As I introduced to you as a married couple for the very first time, Jenny and Beth, and off they go. And in that case, the signing of the marriage certificates themselves might happen 5 minutes after, 10 minutes after. I could meet them at the bar, sign it there. It depends on what you want. It depends on where you're off to next. You might just be circulating with your guests for a while, in which case it's no big deal to get the signatures to happen then. But that's here in Australia as well. Could be a legal requirement to get them signed, the license and the registration of marriage, for example, in different countries to be signed at different times. Suss it out though. Also, please don't discount how important it is to feel comfortable in yourself, in your own body, and in what you're wearing. So your shoes, your attire, whether it's a dress, a jumpsuit, a suit, Jesus, it can be a bathing suit, who cares? How are you most comfortable? You don't have to stand up there and feel like a doll on show. It would be great if you felt like you. This is what we're going for. The more you don't feel like you, the less calm you're going to be. The more you're going to be on high alert, which is not going to help you drink it all in and be receptive, as we said before. Have a think about whether or not you can have a drink before. Is it a good thing for you to have a drink before? Who do you want around you as well? Some family members are not great to be in your presence if you're stressed out. You know those people, because they'll make a mountain out of a molehill. They'll make you more stressed by being around you and picking out every little thing that's going wrong. You know that person. Please don't have them around you as you're getting ready and as you begin your ceremony. Think about it ahead of time. Another tip is to ask your officiant to incorporate little pockets of intentional time during your ceremony. And of course, make sure to use them in the lead up and afterwards as well. It's highly likely you're going to need to be reminded in the moment to look out, to look at your ceremony space, to feel the breeze, to look in your parents' eyes, to look at your family and friends. This is the real deal. This is my wedding ceremony. And of course, a little pocket of time, an intention, if you like. Really look at your fiancé. Take note of their expressions, the little quirks, the little mini smile, maybe a little tear in the corner. Hold their hand if you can. Go through this together. And of course, the biggest tip that I can possibly give you is to search for and find, get recommended, chat with, book in the absolute best celebrant, officiant, minister for you. And only you know who that is, of course. Find the one you click with. Find the one that you would hang out with even if they weren't marrying you. That sort of natural connection, that sort of interaction during your ceremony, it's going to keep you focused in the moment and feeling amazing. Whew. Okay. I went for a while, and I could conceivably go on for another hour or more about all the little things, all those little choices that will impact how you experience your ceremony. As always, take what you will. Some parts of what I just said will seem really obvious, or you won't care so much about them, and others will be like giant flashing red lights for you that make you think, oh my God, if we don't get that right, that could be really huge for us. Focus on what you can change, and then secondly, what you want to change. And promise me, you'll leave the rest. If you have any different ideas or additional ideas on how to feel calm, prepared, present, and receptive during your wedding ceremony, I'd love to hear them too. I'd love to pass them on to everyone else, all the other engaged couples, all the other celebrants and officiants too. So please feel free, jump in my DMs on Instagram, that is @unbridely, or there's a link in the show notes right there at the bottom, like, you know the show notes, right? Where all the description's written. I have little links there to SpeakPipe, and you can leave a 90-second audio message for me. I'll listen to it, get back to you. Or I'll listen to it, maybe add it to the next episode because it'll be full of so much knowledge. Please don't be shy. I'll catch you real soon. Bye. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.